We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And you're back with Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I remain your host, Mark Angelides, and we continue to be joined by Liberty Nation's economics guru, Andrew Moran. Now, earlier in the show, we were talking Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE as it's affectionately known. Now, I want to talk more in depth on the subject that has divided the nation economically more than any other. No, it's not the price of eggs, it's the T word, tariffs. Now, Andrew, you and I have very different views on tariffs, and you are our economics guru over at Liberty Nation. So I'm hoping to be educated, if not convinced, on your position on why tariffs are either good or bad. I'll lay my cards on the table. I think they serve as a useful tool for getting both companies within the United States, companies who have operations outside the United States, and countries that may want to make investments into the United States to kind of get them in line. Let's hear your position on them.
Well, essentially, my position on free trade is this. If somebody wants to go into Mexico and they want to buy shirts for $1 and they want to go back into the United States and sell for $2, that's their purview. I don't like government intervening in trade. I don't like government trying to manage trade. And no matter how much they call it free trade, it's still government managed trade, and that's what I disapprove of. Now, I will make a couple of concessions. I will make one is that the international trade market is completely fractured. Everyone's taking advantage of currency manipulation and the World Trade Organization rules and everything that has been started because of government. Now, perhaps from my Austrian libertarian point of view, maybe I'm naive. Maybe it's because I have this beautiful vision of everyone just exchanging goods and services without politicians. So maybe that's
and Murray Rothbard looking on high, beaming at you.
But and the second part too is that I will also, because I saw this great study done. He's a financial analyst. I was given to it, and it's assessing this government data. And we had a recent C5 segment by saying, how come Trump's tariffs didn't raise prices? Now, yes, they did raise prices on, let's say, washing machines. Washing machines, within months of Trump's tariffs on them, they rose about 10 to 15%. But on a wider scale of why it didn't cause inflation, it is because there were thousands of exemptions by the Trump administration at the time. So there wasn't across-the-board universal tariff like he is currently proposing. There was just, tariffs on specific items, which perhaps can mitigate the inflationary aspect of tariffs.
Yeah, because there's the idea, and it's a correct one, I believe, that the manufacturers at some point will just add the cost of the tariffs onto the consumer.
Actually, can I intervene just one period on that? That study that I referenced earlier, it actually showed that producers didn't pass on the costs onto consumers during the Trump era tariffs. They avoided doing that, maybe out of competitive nature. Maybe the tariffs were not too high. Maybe they adapted to it. But that was one of the most things I found interesting about that data, was how the producers didn't pass on the extra costs onto shoppers. Anyway, please continue. I'm sorry.
Well, that's interesting. That's because I've had some. I kind of believe, from a personal point of view, I kind of believe that is true. That if you've got a company and your global supply chain incurs these new costs, then to do the best for your shareholder, which every company has an obligation to do, then they've got to either increase the prices, which will hit the consumer, or remanage their supply chains, which I think a lot of companies are looking into rather than doing that because they don't want to be out-competed in the market. So I suspect, though, that forcing companies, and I hate to force companies, I hate force in any situation, but to re-examine how their supply chains work, I suspect that can only be a long-term benefit because it removes inherent fragility in the supply chain. So we actually witnessed something along these lines during the COVID lockdowns and the issues at the ports there is we saw that supply chains could be very, very easily interrupted. And of course, with things like medicines, for example, if it becomes cheaper to start producing medicines within the United States, I think that's got to be a net benefit, hasn't it?
All right. So, following the coronavirus pandemic, there was an immediate shift by a lot of companies to start either reshoring into the United States or trying to find alternative regional markets to China. Two, since Trump was elected to office, many companies during their recent earnings calls have said, Trump's tariffs will not necessarily impact us to a greater extent because we've already recalibrated our supply chain management and we've done a lot of insourcing already. Ralph Lauren, for example, they said that, tariffs are not going to really bother us too much because we've really diversified our global supply chain. Three, another thing too, when it comes to supply chains, one of the main shifts for a lot of companies why they went to China was because of savings on labor costs. But now that the Chinese middle class has widened, labor costs have gone higher in these foreign markets, which is why they're trying to find a place like India. But once again, India's middle class is also growing as the economy grows. So eventually, the labor savings is not going to persuade them enough to go to foreign markets. Thereby, maybe they'll go back to onshoring. Four, what I don't like is how the rights, I guess the new right, is using the nudge theory. That this was a theory put together by Cass Sunstein. He was an Obama economist, and his theory was that you can just nudge people to do certain things, nudged by the government. So what the current administration has proposed is they want to use either a lower corporate tax rate or higher tariffs to nudge companies to have manufacturing operations in the United States and ensure American jobs stay in the United States. And that's the hypocrisy that I just have incredible disdain for. So I think I addressed all those 4 points, I hope.
That's a great take. You should put that into an article on the pages of libertynation.com. So at the moment, Trump's talking specifically about reciprocal tariffs, which I guess will be the first in line on his tariff rollout. Now, a reciprocal tariff essentially...
tit for tat.
Tit for tat. It kind of levels the playing field. Not quite at the position of a free market without any barriers, but in terms of numbers on the balance sheet, that's what it creates, isn't it?
Actually, it doesn't, because, you look at the first trade war that the United States had with China under Trump. That did not create a level playing field. It actually created a lopsided event, because what happened was the American farmers, they got really hurt by the tit for tat tariffs, which is why the Trump administration had to subsidize the industry, because they were devastated by China not purchasing enough soybeans. Now, a lot of the Trump administration officials say, well, we reached that trade deal with China right before the coronavirus pandemic. But even to this day, they did not meet the quotas inside of that agreement to purchase soybeans. A lot of people say, because of the public health crisis. But now, a couple years removed from the pandemic, they're still not buying enough soybeans that they said they would. So these trade agreements and these tit for tat retaliation does not create a level playing field. I know Howard Lutnick, he's the co-chair of the Trump transition team. He made that case too, that tariffs can be used as a negotiating tool, but history suggests that does not produce the result as intended.
Well, we'll see how it all plays out, and fingers crossed that Trump can bring the art of the deal back to the tariff situation. Andrew Moran, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.